Hey guys, this is Mr. V, over here to do a book review today for To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Just so you know, right from the beginning, I do a spoiler-free book review, so if you guys see me looking down occasionally, it's just I have some notes just to make sure I don't give any spoilers away. So, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The basic premise of this book is it's about a guy, he's a lawyer, Atticus Finch. He is going to be defending a black individual in the South in the 1930s, which would be considered very controversial in those days. So that is the premise, and it just takes place, like, the perspective is from his kid's perspective. Now, let me get into what I felt about the book, To Kill a Mockingbird. The one thing I thought Harper Lee did very well is that, she set the town immediately, and it was very smooth in how she set the town up, because this takes place in the 1930s, and it's supposed to be a small town, that small town feel, the type of town where, like, everybody knows each other, and even, like, you can tell when somebody is a tourist or anything like that. And she says that immediately, right from the beginning, and she does a great job of doing it, because you could picture the town and the people. Like, you can just picture it in your mind. We've all been through those types of towns, and you can just picture it immediately. So Harper Lee does a great job on that. And, that's why I think it's actually very easy to read right from the beginning, because, it flows very smoothly while she is setting the town up. It doesn't even feel like she's having to go out of her way to set up the town. It just comes in very smoothly. And that's why I say there's not many intense things when she's setting it up. Like, there are some intense chapters or scenes later. And when I say intense doesn't always have to mean violence or anything like that. A lot of intense scenes are just through the dialogue. There's like an intense scene later, which at one point they're in the court, and you can just picture the court, and it's an intense scene. I can't say anything about it, but you can just picture it in the dialogue back and forth, and it is really great how she does that. So, she does that, but in the beginning it's not very intense. It's very smooth, and it's a very easy transition. And as I said, the book is given from Atticus Finch's child's perspective. I should say the lawyer's child's perspective. I think the perspective, the little girl is she's like 7 or 8 years old, so it's given from her perspective. And that's another area where Harper Lee did a great job, was, she brought in, like, she knew the kids' like thought process, and like how kids think about things. And we've all been 8, and then we can see like how they think, and their thought process is very different than an adult, and it's I don't want to say like dumbed down or anything like that, but it's like, they just have a different way of thinking, like a way of perceiving things. So it's like the kid doesn't understand why it's so controversial to defend this black man. And, whereas like the adults already know that, but the kid doesn't, so things like that. And she does a great job. And she also does well in like how the kids interact and like how they talk with each other, because, it's like kids speak to each other differently than when they would speak to an adult, so it's like when the kids are talking to each other, she's using the terminology that kids would use because they're bullying each other or they're doing stuff in school. But then when they go home and they talk to their parent, they're very different. And she does a great job of doing that. And it really makes you, like, you can just picture the scene, and it makes you feel that way, because we were all young, and, we remember what it was like. So it's really good how she does that, because it's just basically the story is, I gave you the main premise, but a lot of it's just about their life, the family life, Like how they even talk about things like, yeah, like when a dog is going wild, or, kids bullying each other, like what's going on in school, starting school, like, like how big summer vacation is for the main character. And it's like how big summer vacation is, because I remember at the start of summer vacation, you're so happy or you're so sad when it ends, and, things like that. And, she does a great job of just that excitement you feel, or that anxiety sometimes you feel on like the first day of school. Things, those are always really fun. And it does, when you're reading this book, it reminded me of being young. So, that was a lot of fun. And while it sounds right now like I am talking just about like a kid's story, this is not a kid's story. This is a very serious subject and serious book. And what she does is, even though it sounds like, oh, they just talk about what the main character's life is like in school, things like that. And, even though that's what it's like, the book really gets you engaged very quickly. A lot of times I would be like, oh, I'd pick up the book and just flip through like 1 or 2 pages, and I was like into it, and I was really engrossed in the book immediately. And, she does a great job of doing that. The only thing I found odd was how I would like, go into the book so easily, but then I never wanted to read more than a few chapters at a time, and I have no idea why. It wasn't that the book was becoming bad. It was just I never wanted to read more than a few chapters in one sitting, which is very odd. Again, I don't know the reason why, but there'd be many times where I'd be like so engrossed in the book, and then I would read a few chapters and I'd be like, okay, I don't want to continue at this point. I'll read it more tomorrow. I have no idea why. Maybe it's because there was a lot of emotion in the book. Like, you can feel the townspeople's emotion, you can feel the kids' emotion, you can just, there's a lot in the townspeople or the lawyer's emotion. You can feel all that, because there's a lot of emotion in terms of like hope, nervousness, wonder, anxiety. There's all different types of emotion. And I say that in a good way. But, that's it. It's, again, Harper Lee did a great job with that aspect as well. One interesting thing, and it's actually really fun, was you never knew which direction this book was going to go. And what I mean is that you just, a lot of books are, not a lot of books, some books, like, what's going to happen. And it was like, in this book I said there's a guy defending, a lawyer defending a black guy. And in some of the books, like in this case, I'll say some of the books may have said, like, the person's going to be found innocent, or they're going to be found guilty. In this book, you didn't know, and it left a lot of wonder and a lot of fun in that way. And like, you just never knew which direction it was going to go. So it was a lot of fun for that aspect. And even when there was only a few pages left, like at the end of the book, you didn't even know that it was coming to an end. Like, that's how it just flowed very smoothly. Like that's how smoothly it flowed. And, I also thought, I thought it had a nice ending. I know it didn't feel like, it wasn't like amazing, spectacular ending, but it didn't feel like you wanted or needed more. So, I thought it was definitely a very nice ending. And, I thought overall, it was a great book. I'll give you my official rating in just a second. But before going into that rating, you guys should remember that the year this was written. I don't know the exact year it was written, but it was released in 1960. So it was written in the 1950s. And 1960 was like the middle of the civil rights movement. So understand there will be some racist terms in here. Like the book does use the term Negro or nigger, and it's just because, again, that takes place in the 1930s. And, just understand that it will use some of those terms. And another thing I would say is, I would say this is a book that's not for like young people or like kids. I know a lot of people want their kids to read this thinking, oh, this will be a great thing. They can learn something great from this book. I actually think that while I found it, that it flowed pretty nicely, I think kids would find it very boring. I don't even remember reading this when I was a kid. I know I did, but most kids would just find it boring. And I just think that, I mean, many classics kids would find boring. But that's why I would say it's also not a book for young people. Well, anyway, I'm going to get to my rating. So, my rating system, I always do my rating on a scale of 0 to 10, where like a 0 is an absolutely awful book. A 5 is an average, and a 10 is phenomenal. Like if it gets a 10, that's like that should be your next read type of book. Because again, a 5 is average, and I'm a pretty tough critic. If you look at some of my other book reviews, you'll see that I'm a pretty tough critic. So it's hard to even move up 0.5 in mine. And don't forget, a 5 is average. So for To Kill a Mockingbird, I would rate this book a 7 out of 10. Again, a 5 is average, so a 7 out of 10. The reason is, as you heard, you heard a lot of great things about this book. But the reason I rated it a 7 was it was a very solid 7. I really enjoyed the book, and 7 is still very high in my rating system. But one of the big downfalls for me was that for some reason I didn't want to just read the book straight through, like in one sitting. It got me engrossed in for those like 2 chapters, 3 chapters, and then I'd want to put it down for a day. And it's just, I don't know why. I saw other people online said the same. So, that's one reason. And there's many reasons for why I'm giving it a 7, because yes, it does have a great premise and all that, but it still is. And while it flows smoothly, it is still fairly slower moving. So just be aware of that. But I still thought that this was a very nice book, and that's why I would rate it a very solid 7. And, I recommend that you guys go and read this. If you guys have any disagreements or comments, please comment below. I hope you guys click the subscribe button. This is Mr. V. Thank you for watching the book review, and hope you guys go and enjoy your reading.